Hello, and thank you for joining the Business Operations Educational Conference as part of the 2021 Virtual Southeast Regional Fruit and Vegetable Conference. The moderator of this session is Charles Hall, Executive Director of the Georgia Fruit and Vegetable Growers Association. This presentation is pre-recorded to reduce technical difficulties. We will be answering your questions live at the end of the presentation. You can submit a question at any point during this presentation by typing your question in the questions box and pressing send. Don't forget to thank our 2021 conference sponsors and exhibitors by visiting the virtual trade show and featured products pavilion. Lastly, don't forget to join us each morning for coffee chats and each evening for networking. You can check the conference agenda for details. Now, I would like to introduce Gopi Munisamy, who is a professor of agricultural and applied economics at the University of Georgia. And he will be sharing his insights on import competition and the Georgia fruit and vegetable industry. As you all know, this has been a major concern to our growers over the past several years, and we are all looking forward to hear from Dr. Gopi Munisamy. Thank you, Charles, for the introduction. I would like to begin with the message that the Georgia fruit and vegetable industry faces a very challenging market environment. I'm going to show you some examples, particularly bell peppers, cucumbers, blueberries, where recent import and price patterns have been very unfavorable to the industry. I will walk through bell peppers, and that example carries over to cucumbers and blueberries. Import volume and values have surged, especially during Georgia growing season, while national production of bell peppers has declined in the last 5 years. USDA data and your own data that you hear from your marketing channels indicate that Georgia growers are facing price pressures in key markets, including Atlanta. And the story, like I said, is going to be repeated for cucumbers and blueberries. Before I dive into those examples, I want to show you the national pattern of fruit and vegetable imports in the past 4 years. Here is a chart from USDA. Sorry for the numbers being a bit smudged. I had to expand it, but I can explain what that picture is. This is monthly imports of all fruits from all market segments, fresh, frozen, juice, and others, from 2015 to 2019 monthly. And the black line is going up and down. You can see peaks and valleys in it. And I would like to refer to the peaks as Florida growing season and the valleys as the Georgia growing season. Okay. On the y-axis of this picture, you have value going from $1.2 billion to $2.2 billion. Okay. And on the x-axis, you have dates starting from January of 2015 through October, through the end of 2019, actually December. And the orange line is capturing the trend in the valleys, and the green line is capturing the trend in the peaks, and both are going up. So regardless of the growing season, we have imports that are trending upward. A similar picture for all vegetables from all market segments, again for the same period, 2015 to 2019, again, the peaks being Florida and the valley being Georgia. The valley is trending strongly upward, as in the case of fruits. The peak, there's some softening in the last year and a half, but the Southeast industry is in this together, that imports competing with the produce grown in the Southeast have grown significantly over the past 4 to 5 years. Let me walk you through bell peppers. this is the best example I have of imports up significantly while production and prices are down significantly. I'll begin with the production part. Here is a chart, and I'm going to show you a lot of statistics for the next few slides. Please bear with me, and I'll get to the message as to what this all means at the end. So the gray line or the black line, whichever way you see it in your computer or in your screen, is the national production value. Is measured on the left side of the axis, going from $0 million to $800 million. As you can see from that gray line, that production value used to be over $700 million back in 2015. It's about $550 million now, 2019. I don't have the 2020 data, official data yet. Okay. And it's not just the production value, it is also the quantity of being produced, quantity of bell peppers being produced. And the blue line, which is measured on the right y-axis, you notice that it's fallen from about 15 million hundredweight to about 12 million hundredweight. And the orange line at the bottom is the Georgia value in millions of dollars. And you don't see any kind of uptake. It's just been pretty flat. Here is the story on bell pepper imports. This picture should remind you of the aggregate vegetable imports, all vegetable imports that I showed you a few slides ago. The same peaks and valleys, okay, and with a strong trend upward, both on the peak side as well as the valley side. The valley, which I got from GFVGA, May through October is our growing season. Back in 2015, monthly imports during our growing season was about $72 million. Essentially, I added up the imports from May, June, July, August, September, October, and divided by 6, I got $72 million. And when I repeated the exercise for 2019, I'm getting $104 million per month on average. So there's a $32 million jump in imports during Georgia growing season in just 4 years. You'll be interested in knowing that during our growing season, May through October, the share of greenhouse imports is as high as 90%. And the greenhouses matter because we have had some data pointing to Mexico's support programs for greenhouses. We can get to that in a moment. So essentially, Mexico is the largest exporter. And in 2015, Mexico's share during Georgia's growing season, this is not for the entire year, just for our May through October growing season, was just 31% of our imports, still large, okay? But in 3-4 years, you notice that their import share has gone to 43%. Not only are they sending more during our growing season, they are also supplying in months that they were not supplying before. So when I checked some data in 2000 to 2010, that period, I did not find many months that they were in the Atlanta market, for example, during Georgia growing season. But they've creeped into April, May, late September, October, and so on as the years pass, particularly after 2015 and 16. Okay, so not only are we having more imports, but they're here more often during our season. Looking at USDA's Agriculture Marketing Services data, okay, I can find prices, and I don't place a lot of confidence on these prices because the data are generally spotty, but we did some analysis. We can match origin and terminal markets. And in this particular example, I was able to match the price of Georgia origin produce going to Atlanta, particularly for bell peppers that are green, extra large, and 1/19 cartons, okay, non-organic. And clearly there is a declining pattern in the prices received for Georgia origin produce in the Atlanta market over the past 4 years. Likewise, There are shipping point prices. These shipping point prices point to southern Georgia. And again, green, extra large, 1/19 cartons and non-organic. This is to all terminal markets. Data were again very spotty, so I picked only June and July data, averaged them from 2015 to 2019, and again I see a declining pattern. Now on to cucumbers. A very similar story in terms of production value and quantity. There's been an uptick between 2016 and 2017, but then it's been downward, both on terms of production value and quantity at the national level. The blue bars indicate value was as high as $350 million in 2016, went up to nearly $400 million in 2017, but it is down to $270 million, $60 million in 2019. Likewise, production quantity fell from a high of more than 18 million, 19 million hundredweight to 15.5 million hundredweight in 4 short years. Okay. And Georgia production value has been declining from 2016 to 2018, but there's been a small uptake in 2019. And cucumber imports data tell me a similar pattern that you saw with bell peppers as well as all vegetable imports. Again, the peaks are other states' growing seasons, and the valley is our growing season. And confirming with GFVGA, I averaged the April through November data as our season. And I found out back in 2015, the imports averaged about $125 million, $129 million, but they're as high as $186 million in 2019. The story hasn't changed between bell peppers and cucumbers. Mexico is again the largest supplier, accounting for 67% of the imports. But looking at the price data was tricky. There were a lot of missing observations. We did find some evidence of price growth nationally, but I couldn't tease out a clear pattern for Georgia origin produce. And you will see this difficulty coming up in other contexts, particularly trade policy and trade remedy in a moment. Blueberries. Cultivated blueberries is my focus here. Looking at the data, imports jumped 50% in 4 years, from $814 million to $1.24 billion. In some people call it 3 years, but some people call it 4 years, but that's just a dramatic growth in imports. Mexico is not a large player to begin with, but has become one because their import value jumped from $145 million in 2016 to $291 million in 2019. That essentially doubled their market share. Looking at the production value and quantity, there's some mixed trends. Nationally, production has been stagnant since 2014 through 2018, but 2019 appeared to be an exceptional year. But the Georgia trend is significantly worse. According to USDA, utilized production quantity fell from 92 to 53 million pounds between 2014 and 18. But as at the national level, 2019 appears to be an exception. National and Georgia price patterns are mixed. Again, I want to mention that price data are tricky, okay? But from what I can find, the prices were pretty good in 2017, but have fallen to levels back in 2013 over the last 2 years. Okay. So what have we observed in produce grown in the Southeast and in particular in Georgia? Is that we have increased imports, lowered our stagnant production, and downward price pressures wherever I can find them. So we have this vicious cycle that I have plotted here. Imports are up, production is down, price pressure is visible, okay? And from my analysis and from research at other places in the Southeast, like Florida, we are going to call this association. because we need serious data, proprietary data, to really understand what is causing what. I acknowledge that from your viewpoint, it is obvious that imports are driving the changes in production and the price pressures that you see. But when you have to implement a policy, we need more evidence, and evidence that can be verified independently. Okay. And we made that case to the United States Trade Representative, USDA, and the Department of Commerce earlier this year. And they have initiated 201 investigations and 332 fact-finding efforts. And in the 201 investigation, they've gone to the length of calling it extremely complicated, in the sense that they need proprietary data, that is the CBI, confidential business information needed. Okay. The 201 investigation will probably end in February, and the report should be out in 2021. The 332 fact-finding efforts for multiple produce, some of them are already in process and some are ongoing. And we will hear when they had monitored imports and prices for 90 days. So some of them will hear soon, some of them will hear later. So establishing causality is very hard, and I'm sure the government is working with you, the growers, and the grower associations, and possibly with retailers and wholesalers to figure out what is causing what. And I wish I could answer that question. I am familiar with the arguments about how this causality goes, but if we were to enact any kind of trade remedy, we would need serious evidence, and that's why we have these investigations. But I have something else to share with you. I'm sure you've heard this before. I believe trade remedy is a short-term fix. Okay, and I'm going to say when it comes about, because of the extremely complicated CBI needed in this context. So I would look at other options, particularly if you are focused on medium to long term. And those include ways to save cost. So there are technologies that are coming about that could help us lower the cost, and also niche brand marketing of produce grown in the Southeast and in particular Georgia. So that is all I have for you, and we are happy to answer questions for you. And thank you all for attending.